So in history, there's been in movies, there's been a lot of these adjacent side of events happening during the time of Jesus, and then we have quite a few of them. I mean, from Down to the Rope, and sometimes there's comedies, and Mel Brooks I think has done something. But this is another one of the venture of navigating around of certain things happening with the life of Jesus as a subplot almost.
Yeah, it's interesting because I wasn't sure how this film was going to play out with its kind of biblical aspect, just watching it from the trailer.
Yeah.
It's interesting how they actually kind of shoehorn in the Jesus subplot.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. It just came out a couple months ago, and we finally got to it. Let's talk about the Book of Clarence.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hey, I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and yes, you found us. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching, and for our loyal fans, sincerely, thank you for continuing to support the show. Another way you can support the show, join our Patreon. It's a great opportunity to find more content that we load up, and we got a couple deals and a couple opportunities for you to tell us what movies we can review in a future episode. Of course, a shout out to you as well. And, of course, we are Minnesota Film Critics Alliance members. And we got a few more members, which I appreciate it. So we're expanding. So if you're a film critic from Minnesota, check it out and see if you want to join the club. Book of Clarence. What is going on?
So Clarence owes a lot of money.
He does, right. Yeah.
He concocts a plan. Pretend to be the Messiah, just like that Jesus guy around town. He eventually ends up angering the Romans, who want to crucify him too.
Okay, I love when the protagonist does every step wrong when you wish they could just do one step right. It's the base of every Coen Brothers protagonist. They kindly fumble through the history. This is not of Coen's brother, but I love it when the protagonist never does one single thing like, why can't you just, hold on a minute, you just want to almost twist and read. You got to do it this way.
Yeah.
And they never do it.
The funny thing is he learns multiple lessons throughout the film, and he still keeps making the same mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, like he's a smarter person on the outset, but he's not really applying any of those lessons.
Right. It's almost like you tell him, you got to do A, I got it, and he still messes up. Right, yeah. So, Book of Clarence, it starts with this fantastic kind of fumbling around the world, and then it almost feels like every vessel he uses is a what not to do opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe paired well with the Jesus subplot of this person who's going around thinking only of others, and you've got Clarence thinking only of how he can use others to benefit himself, and kind of the journey of that. There was a lot of allusions to this film. You could see James Samuel, much like with this film, The Harder They Fall, which referenced a lot of Western ideals, but kind of did it in a new way. This film references a lot of biblical epics. You know, you can see a lot of the Ten Commandments, the greatest.
Oh yeah, like there's a beginning of the chariot race.
Oh yeah. It's almost like we had to get that one out of the way quick. You know, just kind of do it quick so we can get past it. But then I also felt like there was that really comfortable understanding of, you know, Mel Brooks's History of the World Part 1, Life of Brian, like these kinds of, and even to an extent Dogma, which had a 13th Apostle plot line in it as well.
Yeah, and so it's always an element of, it's not so much the timeline fits of how do you correct yourself even though you want to maintain some kind of dignity, but if you maintain your dignity, it's still not polished. Yeah. It's still flawed.
Yeah, like there's really, you know, and sometimes there is the locations we're in, the situations we're surrounded by that do dictate a lot of what happens to us as well, because, you know, like I said, he does make some of the right choices as the film goes on, and it still doesn't work for him. You know, it kind of still fumbles backwards because he is in a position now where even learning lessons hasn't lifted him up, and all he needs to do is stop thinking about himself.
And yeah, the whole spiel of I'm working away, it's almost like you're so tirelessly working a scam that you just, if you just do it legit, it'd be a lot easier. But he doesn't think that way.
Yeah, because, you know, that's his position in the world. Is how do I overcome that?
Yeah.
When you start out behind, how do you get caught up? And I think surrounding an already terrific actor like Lakeith Stanfield, who I think is great here in a dual role, surrounding him with,
because he doesn't play he's not a bumbling idiot.
No, he's kind of a clever. He kind of reminds me of his character like from Uncut Gems, but switched, where it's like he's smart, even though he's kind of making the wrong choices.
Yes,
you know. But you surround him in this movie with, I think, one of the greatest like supporting casts I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah.
Like they kept putting names on the screen at the beginning, and I was like, how are you going to fit all these guys in? I remember I had a checkbook. I was
Benedict Cumberbatch.
I was waiting for Cumberbatch the whole movie. Didn't realize he was right in front of me.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, okay, Cumberbatch is here at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice to see that again. You have great. I think that's what James Samuel does really well. Is he collects these great casts of people, where even when some of his narrative problems kind of shine, he still has cast in front of you that is performing the roles well, that is uplifting the material.
Well, he gives them it's not just an appearance, but he gives them things to do. Right. So
every single person has like an important part of the process, even if it's a smaller scene.
Right. And I think he stages these films, I'm quoting Harder They Fall too. He has wonderful staging of his films. I think they're a little bit indulgent of him himself, but I don't care. People make movies for themselves no matter what. Yeah. And I just like to be, it's almost like I'm viewing somebody's admiration of what they appreciate. Obviously, Harder Than Fall is almost an accolade to all the things he liked about Westerns. Yeah. And this movie is all the things I liked about this kind of genre of these biblical times. Yeah. Yeah, but I also like that he puts in this thread of these protagonists that you root for them, they always correct themselves, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And Samuel does a great job of, he's looking at basically these subgenres, like a Western, like a biblical epic, and he's kind of pointing out the obvious that, like, yes, there were black people in these stories, and yet we aren't doing that. Like, how often have you seen a Western that actually has a black character in a notable light? Right. Exactly. I only think of like Morgan Freeman in Unforgiven. It doesn't happen very often. And same thing when you look at biblical epics. Newsflash, there was people of different colors back during the biblical times. So why the hell have we avoided them in every single adaptation? It's nice to see that he's basically adding his own stamp and doing the music for both of these films as well.
Right. And I appreciate, we have been many times before. I really much enjoy about these movies, especially Book of Clarence, is the dynamic of everybody. It's the politicking of them. Like you almost like a David Mamet script. Are you scamming me as I'm scamming you at the same time? Are you really showing me all your cards, or are you holding back a little bit? And I think with Book of Clarence, he kind of withholds himself every time he meets with somebody. But every time every interaction he meets with somebody, it stays with that character. I always like that. I call it staining.
Yeah, and he kind of regresses with certain people, like he does with Anna Diop's character. She plays Verinia. Anna Diop, who is in Us, and she also had a great standout role in Nanny on Amazon Prime.
Us! Gosh.
Yeah, she was fantastic in the film, but his scenes with her, I particularly love how he adds a little bit of his visual flair, like when he mentions the ruby sapphire eyes and we get the little blink, but we also see him as a character progressing. He knows what he needs to do in order to win her favor, and he just can't do it.
I do like that little times of recognizing, don't forget, this is a movie, and it places a little bit of surreal.
It seems like he as a director is not all that interested with getting you to believe this is the real world. Yeah. And he's more focused on, I want to take you on a fantasy. That's what his films kind of feel like.
Exactly. Like he likes that, I want to stay with the magic. I don't want to keep you grounded in this realism. I want to present that we're still this kind of a working artwork at the same time. Yeah.
And I want to recognize as well, I'm going to say his name, and I'm probably going to say it wrong again, Babs Olusemokan. I'm just going to begin continue my year-long celebration after he appeared in Dune Part 2 and the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. He plays Asher the Torturer, the slave owner, in the small scene. every time I see this guy in a movie, I find him so enigmatic and interesting. And now I'm patiently awaiting what he's going to surprise me with next this year, because he's having a great year.
Yeah, and thank God you said his name. I'm not going to. Right. Yeah.
I'm just going to call him Babs. He's just my good guy. Every actor that showed up in the film, I kind of had forgotten that they were in that cast list at the beginning. Yeah. But the writing that he has pretty sharp as far as dialogue and character movements, even though I think he kind of loses his focus near the back half of the film.
Right. I think it gets a little more self-indulgent than I wish he would be, and kind of because he likes to think, I need this, I need to put this in there, I need to put this in there. If you just eliminate yourself and restrictive rules and ask what the movie needs rather than what you want to put in there.
Yeah, because I feel like with his previous film, we had it was kind of a romping good time the whole time, and then we just gave it flares of emotional resonance.
The dramatic tone.
Yeah, but we still never really lose that kind of a feeling that we're in. And it's never long enough that we forget what movie we're watching. In this movie, I felt like some of the more emotional beats kind of took over the comedy and the satire.
People like to put things in categories, and if I would more like a dramedy. It's not a comedy, but it's not it recognizes it's not really serious at sometimes. And I don't know what would you put it in category? Would you put it just in drama or in comedy section?
It's hard to tell because the first half I kept thinking like, wow, this is going to be up there with like History of the World, with Life of Brian. Like this is hard hitting. And then the back half of the film kind of wants to focus the film different places, and I don't think that we as an audience get enough time to make that shift with him. We've seen movies that make that.
Once again, he says it better than I do. Right?
We've seen things like From Dusk Till Dawn and X, where they make that big shift in the second half, but it just doesn't seem to work as well here. The film's still entertaining, it's still inspiring, it's still interesting, but it's not as effective as what he did previously.
Right, and it's not these comedies where you're just gonna like laugh out loud. It's one of those like, jeez,
it's more that kind of peculiar, huffing kind of joke. Yeah.
But I liked his style. What he's doing with this, I get it, but I think you want to do a little more light than this because he really goes heavy at the end.
Yeah, it seems like at the beginning of the film that we are hard hitting the satire, that we are taking big risks with faith-based movies, which is something that I think faith-based movies need, is a big shakeup. They need people that are going to have characters who are challenged by it in order for them to grow. We talked about Hacksaw Ridge a couple years back on the show. That is a movie where I feel like a character's faith is tested. You have Mel Gibson's character in Signs, a character who is tested. That is the test, and I think that he goes through that test in the film. So while you might think of this film as kind of having a lark at the faith, it's also kind of being serious about it at the same times. It's taking those risks that I appreciate.
Yeah, so, of course, it's been out for a while. I'm sure it's available on, I think, on Netflix.
Netflix just dropped on there,
So if you have the opportunity to the Book of Clarence, put a comment down below and see what you think of our assessments.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts on the film down below.
The conversation going.
And if you happen to be a person like me, I was watching the film with subtitles, and I noticed there's a reference, in the film to no one says my full name. No one says Clarence. They always call me Clarence. Well, in the subtitles, he's written as Clarence.
Yes.
It's Claance.
Yeah.
So I thought that was funny. But anyway, yes, let us know your thoughts on the film down below. We'd love to share that conversation with you. Of course. And join that Patreon. Links down in the description. Tell us what we're going to cover next. We're waiting on your decision. Thank you so much for joining us. And you can find all of my film reviews over at goetfilmreviews.com.
And you can find the Book of Nick, the St. Paul Filmcast anywhere you find podcasts. Once again, thanks for watching.